My name is Mary. At 88 years old, I've spent over 4 decades as a hospice nurse in Delaware, holding the hands of over 1,000 people as they crossed the threshold. My friends thought it was morbid, but I was drawn to it by a fascination with truth. You see, most of us spend our entire lives performing. We wear masks of strength, wealth, or being fine while we're actually drowning. But in that final room, under the soft glow of the monitors, the performance ends. The truth is that people don't become honest until they are dying. That is the moment every mask falls away, revealing the most raw, authentic version of a human being you will ever witness. I've seen people leave as gently as a fading candle, and others leaving in a state of sudden, sharp realization. If you understand the pattern I've seen, you won't be the one looking back with regret. In 41 years of sitting in that quiet chair beside the dying, I witnessed a phenomenon that never failed to strike me: the complete evaporation of material importance. Across over 1,000 deaths, from the wealthiest executives to those who had nothing to their name, not a single person used their final hours to talk about their career. Not one person asked to see their bank statement. Not one mentioned their job title, their hard-earned promotion, or the prestige of their corner office. In that final room, those things came up exactly 0 times. It's a jarring realization when you consider how much of our lives we sacrifice to build these monuments. We spend decades stressed over deadlines, losing sleep over retirement funds, and arguing about who's right in a boardroom. But at the threshold, the system of value flips entirely. The stuff of life, the cars, the trophies, the social status, it all becomes transparent, like a ghost that was never really there. When the body begins to shut down, the mind doesn't reach for a resume, it reaches for meaning. I've watched powerful men who ran empires realize in a flash of clarity that they had spent 40 years building a castle of sand while the tide was coming in. The tragedy isn't that they worked hard, it's that they mistook the means for the end. If you could see what I've seen, you would realize that the things consuming your stress right now will not exist in your final hours. They are simply noise that drowns out the music. In 1,000 deaths, there is one thing that everyone talks about, without exception: people. When the world begins to fade, the soul doesn't call for a business partner or a boss. It calls for the ones who truly mattered. I've seen grown men, 80 years old and powerful in their prime, crying out for their mothers like lost children. They whisper names from 50 years ago, names of siblings they haven't spoken to in decades, or a first love they let slip away. I'll never forget a man dying of lung disease in 1983. He kept repeating one name: Tommy. His wife was right there, holding his hand, and he was calling for Tommy. I eventually found out that Tommy was his childhood best friend. They'd had a falling out in their 20s over something as trivial as a borrowed car and a few dollars. 40 years of silence followed. And yet, in his final hours on this earth, the only name on his lips was the boy he used to ride bikes with. The tragedy isn't just the loss, it's the realization that we let our pride build walls that we can't tear down when time runs out. We assume there's always a tomorrow to make that call. But the truth is, the connections we neglect are the only things we'll desperately want to hold on to at the end. Most people go through what I call the reckoning. There's a window, sometimes hours, sometimes a day, where the dying person becomes suddenly, sharply lucid. It's as if the fog clears for one last look at the truth. In that clarity, everything they've held inside for a lifetime comes pouring out. I once cared for a 90-year-old grandmother, a woman who had been dignified and composed her entire life. She called her daughter to the bedside and said, "I need you to know I was always proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it." Her daughter collapsed in sobs. 90 years of a mother's pride, locked inside because saying it felt uncomfortable, or because that's not how our family talked. I saw a retired judge, a man of absolute authority, grab my hand and confess, "I was terrified. My whole life, every day I was terrified, and I pretended I wasn't." His entire life had been a performance of strength, while underneath was just a scared boy who never told anyone. The reckoning is a beautiful yet haunting moment because it proves that we could have lived with that honesty all along. We don't have to wait for the monitor to start beeping to let people in. When the reckoning ends, the replay begins. This is the part that changed me permanently. As they grow quiet, their eyes often drift to a point beyond the ceiling, and they start describing things. They aren't milestones or accomplishments. They are tiny, sensory, seemingly insignificant moments. A woman in her 90s once smiled, the first time in weeks, describing the smell of her mother's kitchen on a rainy Sunday. Bread baking, the fogged windows, the pot of soup on the stove. A farmer didn't talk about his harvest. He talked about the way the morning mist hung over his field in October. A teacher described the sound of children's shoes echoing in a hallway. These are the files the brain keeps when everything else is deleted. Not the wedding day itself, but the quiet second before the ceremony when he saw her through a crack in the door. Not the expensive vacation, but the afternoon they got lost and sat on a curb sharing a bottle of water, laughing at nothing. These unremarkable moments that nobody posts online or photographs are the very things your soul reaches for when it's shutting down. They are the true fabric of a life well lived, the quiet Tuesday afternoons that meant nothing then and everything now. After 4 decades, I can tell you there is a stark difference in how people leave this world. I've seen people leave gently, like a candle flickering out in a peaceful room. But I've also seen people leave screaming, not from physical pain, but from the agony of regret. They scream because they realize too late that they wasted the one thing they can never get back. They spent their entire existence building a life they thought they were supposed to have, rather than the one they actually wanted. The paradox is that the more successful someone was by worldly standards, the harder the departure often was if that success came at the cost of their soul. The people who go in peace aren't necessarily the ones who did everything right. They are the ones who were present. They are the ones who didn't leave words unsaid. The scream is the sound of a soul realizing it lived a lie. It's the realization that the deadlines and the arguments about who was right were just distractions from the only thing that mattered, how it felt to be alive. The tragedy isn't death itself. It's the dying inside while you're still breathing because you're too afraid to be real. What I know with absolute certainty is that the things consuming you right now will evaporate. The bills, the promotions, the he said, she said, they simply won't exist in your final hours. What will exist is how things felt. You will remember the warmth of your child sleeping on your chest. You'll remember the first time someone said, "I love you," and you felt it land in your stomach. You'll remember the rain on a window when you were safe inside with someone you loved. This is the invisible symphony of a human life. It's a hand held under a table, a laugh that came out of nowhere, or the sound of your mother calling your name. These are the invisible things that have no price tag but carry all the value. We spend our lives building things that won't matter, while the things that will matter are happening quietly in the background, unremarked upon. I retired at 75 because the urgency of this message became unbearable. I realized that every patient was a messenger, and the message was always, don't wait. Don't wait to feel the grass under your feet. Don't wait to be the person you actually are. Presence is the only currency that doesn't devalue when the end comes. I am 88 years old now. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know this. When my hour comes, I won't be reviewing my resume. I'll be reaching for the people I loved and the quiet Tuesdays that felt like home. My message to you is simple. Don't wait. Don't wait for a deathbed to say what the living room was built for. Whatever you need to say to your father, your child, or your oldest friend, say it now. Not next week, not when things calm down. Say it while there are still hands on the other side to hold yours. The door closes mid-sentence for so many, leaving behind only the words that waited too long. Tell the truth. Love fiercely. Live now.